Ow. Ow. Oh, all right. So I made a huge mistake. There's this awesome arcade near me called Arcade Monsters that me and the gang decided to go to last Saturday. Now, the interesting thing is that they give a discount to anyone who shows up in some sort of costume. So me and my infinite wisdom decided to go as Erwin in full 3D maneuver gear. Now, it turns out that the Curse of Ymir might just actually be scoliosis because I decided to go apeshit on DDR while wearing this. And this isn't even half of it. This is like a third of all of the belts you have to wear. So there's this like one strap that goes around your thigh that you have to tighten as hard as possible in order for it to pull up on your foot. And I kind of may have turned off my circulation. So as much fun as I ended up having, I may have had a little too much fun. So I'm probably just gonna be bound to this chair for the next few days, meaning that it's a perfect time to catch up on some manga, right? Well, maybe not, because it kind of looks like the manga industry is going through a little bit of a problem right now. No, I'm not saying that the actual manga being written right now sucks. I'd argue just the opposite. I'm saying the English market seems to have a little bit of a problem. According to the vice president of Viz, the company that owns the Western releases of all the different Shonen Jump manga, there's been a 70% increase in manga sales since COVID-19 began. Now, with Viz having a $2 a month app that gives you access to their entire library, you would think that the increase in demand would have no effect on the supply of manga, right? But if you think about it, if even like 20 or 30% of all the people who started reading manga during quarantine became collectors, the demand for manga would explode, and that's exactly what happened. Take this box set, for example. One Piece box set number 1. One Piece is literally the most popular comic series in human history, so you would think that the supply would be able to keep up with demand, but it actually took me months to get my hands on this. Now, later volumes of most series are still possible to get, but that's to be expected because most people just read the beginning volumes of any series. So for all of the different series that people have begged me to continue, Black Clover sits right on top, especially since what I said about it in my first manga haul video. I have been trying to get my hands on volume 2 ever since I picked up volume 1. From the day that I read volume 1. I really do mean that day. Since I read volume 1 literally months ago, I have been trying to get volume 2 from any source possible, and it has not shown up once on Right Stuff, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere. The closest place that I'd be able to go to get my hands on this book, no. Then there's Chainsaw Man volume 2, which hasn't been out of stock for as long, but is still nearly impossible to find. This one is particularly prudent for me to find because of all of the different series I talk about on stream. This is the one that I constantly tell people was a little overrated from what people said, with the reply always being, no, you gotta read the rest of the volumes. But when I want to collect more, it's gone. Now, obviously, I could just read it on the Shonen Jump app, but like, it's the principle. Anyway, what have I actually read? So if you've been on my stream, you know I have a channel reward system where you can force me to buy and read any manga you want, within reason, of course. And the first book that it was used on was Gundam The Origin Volume 1. Now, admittedly, I'm not a big Gundam fan, and it's kind of strange given that mecha is actually my favorite genre. But I always found that Gundam can get a little bit dense when it comes to the setting and the politics, but actually reading Gundam in print has changed that a little bit for me. Gundam The Origin is exactly what it says, the origin, particularly of the Universal Century timeline. Reading this book has made me wonder how Bandai was able to take a series that's so deeply rooted in warnings about fascism, racism, and warfare, and turn it into something so heavily marketed as toys. It reminds me quite a bit about how my favorite anime, Evangelion, was able to go from something that's a surreal story about depression and identity to literally selling lipstick off of one of its subjects. Now, I do have to say that this book was a little bit difficult to read, particularly because the art is modeled after the original 70s anime despite it coming out in the 2000s. By the way, check out the quality on this thing. This book was not cheap. Next up was the very first Pokemon Adventures. Now, if you've ever met someone who's read this series, they all act the same way. Yo, you gotta read Pokemon Adventures, it's so much better than the anime and the games. Then you get people who insist that Pokemon Adventures is some dark and mature Pokemon storyline. Spoiler, it's not. Although there are some less TV-friendly events that happen in this book. For example, zombie Pokemon and the Elite Four literally wanting to wipe out humanity. Overall, it's a very enjoyable approach to the Pokemon universe that allows for a little bit more creativity and complexity that you would get from the Pokemon anime. Part of releasing a weekly children's anime in Japan is very similar to releasing a weekly cartoon here to children in America. Now, putting content completely aside, unlike regular anime, you have to assure that a kid tuning in this week and then tuning in a month later can follow the same storyline or just understand what's going on. So it's unlikely that you're going to have longer, more complex multi-episode threads that continue from week to week, like you would in a regular anime. However, when you you switch over to a print medium, there's a lot more of an allowance for longer, more interesting story threads. So if you've been looking for a story in the Pokemon universe that feels a little bit more like, well, a story, then Pokemon Adventures is likely for you. So I read more of Gigant. So there's a little bit of a funny story. This book, well, actually both the books, have pretty hardcore sex scenes and full frontal nudity. But at Barnes & Noble, neither of them are in shrink wrap. Most adult manga are in shrink wrap like Berserk or Goodnight Poon Poon, but apparently neither of these are. I suppose that the staff at Barnes & Noble don't read too thoroughly about what they put on the shelves. Anyway, Gigant is the third series from Gantz writer Hiroya Oku, and is just as strange and messed up as the other two. So the story focuses on Ray, a high schooler, and his favorite porn star Papiko. As the title suggests, this porn star Papiko obtains the power to turn into a giant. Now, it would be too much to explain the story in its entirety, but I can say that this manga makes me, well, uncomfortable. Not in the ooh, gross blood and sex kind of way, but rather the characters themselves. There's the scene where Ray asks Papiko to become his girlfriend, and she subsequently turns him down. He then proceeds to cry and start wailing in the middle of the restaurant they're in. And in one of the heaviest manga double takes I've ever done, Papiko just gives in and says yes. Hiroya Oku is a master at tackling taboo subjects that other manga authors just won't touch, but reading this book makes me kind of wonder if he's perhaps gone in over his head. I'm enjoying it, but I'm gonna need to see a little more. Yawn and Moo. Now, this isn't actually my book, this is my girlfriend's book, but I would be remiss if I didn't share it with you. Now, I introduced this as Yawn and Moo, but if you look closely, there's actually a name up here. You can see it says Junji Ito. Yes, Junji Ito, who drew this and this, made a manga about his two cute little cats. This book is surprisingly hilarious, and that might not seem like much, but I've laughed at a grand total of like 3 manga in my life. Overall, this book is more about Ito moving in with his new fiance and the cats coming along for the ride, and it's just about what you would expect. Ito doesn't like cats and has to live with them. But holy shit, just look at the way he draws his cats. They look like fucking demons. Wait, no. Look at the way he draws his fucking wife. Like, this guy isn't capable of drawing cute cuddly cats or even his goddamn wife without making them look like eldritch horrors. If you're trying to complete a Junji Ito collection, then this book is an absolute must. It's literally the perfect book to pull out and say, hey, did you know this exists? But honestly, this shit is adorable and it's like the perfect coffee table manga. Do people still have those? So this was the last manga that I was told to buy on my stream, and honestly, it might be my favorite. Here's the thing, like I said, I almost never laugh at anime or manga. And it's not because they aren't funny, I'm sure they are, but humor is something that requires both a language and a cultural context to really understand. I don't think people realize just how much of comedy is just referential humor, even if it is just a reference to the culture itself. I think that the only anime that I've ever consistently laughed at was Science Made Us Fell in Love, which is nothing but computer science grad student humor. So of course I found it funny. And Agretzko, which is just unbelievably underrated. But then Grand Blue comes along. This manga is surprisingly in the top 10 manga of all time on my anime list. Meanwhile, the anime is sitting at number 150. I've never watched the anime, but I don't feel like I need to after reading this. So this manga, in short, is about a college student moving to a beach town for university, and eventually gets dragged into a diving club. It really isn't any more complicated than that, but the combination of humor and heart that Grand Blue employs is what makes it. The reactions are fantastic, the jokes always seem to hit, but overall it's just the realness of it that makes this series so endearing. Is it really a top 10 manga contender in my book? That's certainly debatable, but I absolutely would recommend this for anyone looking for a hidden gem. And that's all I got for you guys this video. The manga shortage is really only affecting the most popular series out there, and again, it's really only the earlier volumes. So maybe this is a sign that you should go out and try something a little less mainstream, or at least have something to keep you occupied for when the ending of Attack on Titan is leaked in the next couple days. Peace!